Hello and welcome. I'm Kamla. Today my guest is Hollywood director Joshua Michael Stern, who has a new film out called Jobs. This is a film on the legendary Silicon Valley entrepreneur and founder of Apple Computers. Ashton Kutcher acts as Steve Jobs. Here's a clip from the film.
What are you working on?
It's a computer terminal that hooks up to the TV, and in theory, it'll display whatever you're working on.
Steve? Wow.
This is the future. They're overreacting. Nobody wants to buy a computer.
How does somebody know what they want if they've never even seen it?
Huh?
A lot of people look at Steve Jobs as the guy up on the stage selling you the next great thing. And what the film does is it says, all right, what was happening backstage? Where he came from, or what made that company great.
Do you own a typewriter?
Great.
Okay, now imagine combining your typewriter with your television set. Hello?
Take it the call went well.
Trust me, on my INDEPE.
Steve wanted to change the world, which is a noble ambition, but how do you accomplish that?
Ladies and gentlemen, the future of personal computing, Apple II.
Apple Incorporated went public this morning.
Chasing dreams since I was 14. Y'all can't stop me.
He was somebody who believes in something so much, who was driven to exactness, and he did not stop.
We've raised the bar, and if we want to stay there, we got to risk everything.
He's trying to start a war with IBM.
When you have a ringleader like Steve Jobs, you are driven to outdo yourself on a daily basis.
You got to have something that you're passionate about, because otherwise you won't have the perseverance to see it through.
We're not selling computers. We're selling a tool for the mind.
I don't go a day without touching an Apple product.
I'm literally on this thing 8 hours a day. There should be an Apple AA, right? Let me just take this call really quick. All of the guys played their part in this symphony. It's one of the great modern symphonies ever, and the legacy of perfection will continue.
Steve Jobs was an inventor and an artist.
We have something really special to share with you today. It's 1,000 songs in your pocket. I'd like to introduce you to the iPod.
And people are going to celebrate him for a very long time.
The people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do.
Just out of curiosity, how much are we getting paid?
$700.
Some big box there.
Here's our interview with the director of Jobs. Ashton Kutcher acts as Steve Jobs, and Joshua Gad acts as the other Steve, Steve Wozniak. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Well, good to have you. Jobs, how did you get involved in this project and turn on your mind?
I was called by the producers in Dallas who had seen my second film, Swing Vote, and they had a script, and we brought the script to Ashton and in LA, and it happened very quickly. And it was just a story and a movie that was irresistible. I mean, you had to tell the story of the icon that has become associated with so much of the technology that we use. It was just something that I couldn't say no to.
When did you turn on your mind for Mac products?
I was pretty young. I had an Apple II.
Oh, you had an Apple II?
Yeah, I had the big case, you know, that came with it, that big, like, suitcase.
Right.
So for me, it's been in my life. And I went through a period where I couldn't afford Apple and Mac product, you know, because they were so expensive, so I went to Dell, and then I came right back, you know. But there was something always intuitive about it that I just loved. So for me, it's always been part of my life, sort of the appliance that you use without really thinking about how it came to be, which is why I was also interested in this film, you know. The prehistory of Apple, in a sense, like, you know, the struggle that Steve went to bring this vision over 30 years to people to sort of realize it. And that's always interesting for anybody who wants to dramatize, you know, something about the world or about, you know, a great mind. He was a great mind.
So was this a project, from what I've read,
Yeah.
the gentleman who produced the film and
Mhm.
whose son wrote the script,
Yeah.
they were influenced by the fact that their whole office came to a standstill the day Jobs announced he's retiring.
That's right, yeah.
So did Mr. Jobs know that there was a film being made by you all?
No, not at all, not at all. They were writing it when he retired, and then he passed away, but he wasn't aware, no.
An extraordinary showman, very intelligent, creative, and inspirational. And, you know, and that's the guy I knew before we started making this film. And I remember I was driving in my car, and I heard that he had passed away. And it hit me, and I pulled my car to the side of the road. It was almost like one of those things that I actually thought to myself, you know, like, I always thought it was weird that people remember where they were the day Kennedy got shot. And I'll never forget where I was the day that I heard Steve Jobs passed away. And I drove home, and I text messaged a couple of my friends, and then I got on my computer, and actually text messaged them, is it true? They confirmed it.
And yesterday, Ashton Kutcher said something very interesting.
Yeah.
He says, I remember the day I found out Mr. Jobs was no longer there. Where were you?
Where was I? I was, actually, I think I was with my kids. I was at home, and it really made me sad. I mean, there was something about it that really struck a nerve with me. And though I wasn't ever connected to Jobs in the sense that I wasn't somebody who followed him, it was something that I felt deeply because, as Ashton said, as I went out to talk to people about it and communicate grief, I was using all of his products. You know, I was using, you're using the computer and texting. I mean, you know, so in a weird way, he created a world for us, to sort of, an environment for us all to connect with each other on. And so, and that was the experience he had too. Yeah.
So I'm reading the tagline from the poster.
Yeah.
Some see what's possible, others change what's possible.
Right, yeah.
What did you change in this movie when making the movie? How much of it had to be left at the editing table?
Well, I mean, he has a huge life, and we had a movie that was already over 2 hours long. We actually did not leave that much out from what was written. We did leave, a lot of moments of Steve's life out. And, well, we didn't show when he met his wife. We didn't really get personal. I didn't want to get into his relationship with his wife because that's something that I felt and we all felt was really something sensitive. But this wasn't a movie about that. This wasn't a movie about that. This was a movie about him and creating the product. I mean, there were little bits. There was a scene with his first girlfriend we left out, and there was a scene when he was a little bit younger that we left out. But it was all in with the goal to focus the movie, And so I think everything you see is pretty much what was written.
And yesterday after the movie, when you were talking about how this movie is actually, the way you approached it, you described it as being a Shakespearean tragedy.
For me, yeah.
For you. And so the palace intrigue in this film takes place in the boardroom.
It does, yeah.
How difficult was it for you to shoot those scenes in the boardroom?
They were difficult because it's just, you have long pages of scenes in a room. But we built the room, and it was and we could bevel the glass, and I had tracks, and I was able to get in and out of people, so it was...
So that's a set?
Oh, it's all a set, yeah.
Did you visit Apple at all?
We did not...
Were you allowed to?
No, we were not allowed. Well, we never approached it. I think we might have approached it, but we were never allowed in.
Oh, that's why the long shots of Apple.
Well, at the
campus.
Yeah, at the very end. But the end of the movie is really just a little bit at the Apple campus, but we weren't actually there. But we found a lot of locations that mimicked the real Apple, so it sort of gives you the illusion.
So how did you find out what the office looked like?
We had some research photos of people that had taken them, but we really just had to take poetic license on a lot of it, yeah. Because we didn't know exactly what the workroom looked like, But the old Apple, when they first started, there was lots of photos, and all of those, the cubicles you see during the Apple days were the exact replica made by the company. Herman Miller, I forget the name of the company, but they made those cubicles.
The chair people?
The chair people, yeah. Steve had commissioned all those cubicles to be made, and we used the original ones in all of the Apple scenes for, in the original Apple.
And how did you get all the Mac and the Apple II and all of that?
We built a lot of them, and then we just got a lot of them. I mean, we just were able to a lot of them that are still out there. But we did build a lot. We manufactured.
And Ashton Kutcher, as folks have been saying, named the part of Jobs.
Yes.
With the shuffle and all of that.
Yes.
How did you address him on the set? Did you address him as Steve?
No. No, but he was very much in the role, and it was something very important to him. And he searched for how to live in his skin, and had seen hours, hundreds of hours of footage. And so he very much was in the role all the time. Though very often he was struggling with knowing whether he nailed it. And for me as a director who had sort of the sense of the whole movie in my mind, I could tell him, yes, you're great. Am I being sympathetic was some question he always asked me. Because it's hard to be Steve. It wasn't easy because he was constantly trying to explain things to people that were very difficult to explain because that technology didn't exist. So there was no point of reference for people. So he was trying to tell people he wanted something that didn't exist. So for him, it was frustrating.
In the movie, you show Steve Jobs as a flawed character, and that's what you mentioned yesterday.
Yeah.
This Shakespearean approach, and here is this flawed character. Why is it that you didn't show anything about the love aspect of Jobs? His yearning to be loved, and then his family. You said you left out the part where he met his wife.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering why the love part was left out. Was that deliberate on your part?
Well, it wasn't that it was deliberate. It was that there wasn't that much, until he met his wife, there wasn't that much evidence of it. That we really couldn't, he dated a few girls, but they were very short-lived, and the stories of those relationships were fraught with Steve being not the nicest guy, to be honest with you. So a lot of our struggle, once he got into Mac, was finding evidence of it, and we really didn't want to start to sort of, take shots in the dark, and we didn't want to assume things that we didn't know, especially in a biopic.
What about his sister? Because early on, his sister, he meets his sister.
He meets his sister. We end the movie in his late 30s. He did meet his sister, but the sister became an issue of that became a movie in and of itself. Meaning, if we started to go into that beat, taking a long walk, saying it's good to know you, and all those sort of things, it would have really taken the movie in a direction that we felt would then have to get us back on track. And I think there was too much to tell there. That's the thing. From the time he gets fired from Mac, which is about when he learned he actually meets his sister in those 10 years. And the 10 years where he went to Next, and he did Pixar, and he met his wife at Stanford, and he was going to work every day. There's a movie you can make about those 10 years, in and of itself.
Would you be making one?
I don't know if I will, but someone can. And certainly someone's going to make the movie after the iMac to the end of his life, where it was, where he struggled so much. So there's a lot of story still to tell.
So this movie was focused tightly on the early years,
yes,
where you're showing a flawed character and how he built a company.
Right. And well, it was this flawed character, but it's a character who was misunderstood. And for me, that was what was most interesting about it, was that this was a guy that was misunderstood. All of us feel misunderstood at some point. And so he wasn't defined by that. He kept pushing forward, and he kept focused on his dream and achieving the thing he wanted to do the most, which was bring people to computer. So for me, it was a story about overcoming his own personal flaws and misunderstandings, and still achieving so much, and not be defined by people's judgments and what people were thinking of him. And though there might have been some sort of casualties to that journey for him personally, he wasn't sentimental with people. He didn't have a sentimental feeling about people, I gather. I don't know for sure. So for him, it was really about the product. It was about everything. He showed love by the things that he made. That's where his heart was.
And did you get any people from Apple helping you? That is the early...
We had, there was Daniel Kottke. We had some people advise, yeah.
Steve Wozniak?
Not Wozniak. Well, Woz is working with the other movie. He's working with the Sony movie, so he's on payroll there. But we had a lot of the original guys who were in the, Chris Espinosa, all those kids that were in the garage. They saw the movie. We screened it for them, and they loved it. And they said thank you. I mean, somebody said to Ashton, said thank you for bringing Steve back for a couple hours from the early Steve, because for them it really got the spirit of who he was. Somebody said that exact scene may not have happened, but that scene happened 100 times, which is all you can try to do, is get it, nail it.
And has his family seen the film?
I know. Well, I don't think that we wouldn't know. I wouldn't know.
You haven't?
I haven't, no.
Okay. And have you visited the Apple campus after the film was made?
We saw the Apple campus, but we were never allowed in the Apple campus.
And why should somebody see this film? Outside of the Valley in California?
Yeah. Well, because this is a story for everybody. It's about following your dreams and overcoming obstacles and knowing that Steve says something at the end of this movie, which is that when you realize that everything you use in the world was created by people who were no smarter than you, your world will change. And that's the message for our children and ourselves. And I think we're all in a place, and the world is in a place where you need to go somewhere and get sort of reminded that inspiration exists. And that if you have a vision, no matter what job you are, if you have a company you want to start, or you have a website you want to create, just do it. There's no harm in it. And who knows, you really could be the one who defines something that we all use in the future.
Thank you so much for your time and doing the interview.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Your perfectionism, they're looking at losses in the millions before this thing even gets off the ground.
They're not seeing the big picture.
That's right. The shareholders don't see past their own shadows. They're only concerned about the here and the now. And the board has got blinders on. If they could see you, they'd take them off. They'd see you the way I see you, the way your employees see you.
Pizza is my project. It's mine. And they're taking it away from me?
You're letting them take it away from me.
Bullshit, Steve. You know that's not true.
Thank you for watching. We'll be back with another show. Until then, goodbye.